It's my pleasure to greet you here to the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. And I hope you had a great Labor Day weekend. I certainly know I did. What did I do this weekend? I got to be with my family. That includes our two dogs. And those dogs are not cheap to have. I'm going to begin today by talking about the cost of pet ownership. And, also have a special warning for you if you know someone or you yourself are considering buying a condo right now in the state of Florida. A special alert that is specific to the problems the state of Florida is having. I'm going to tell you what you need to be aware of, what you need to factor in so that you don't get burned. So, speaking of getting burned, pet bills are really something. And you have no idea what kind of expense it is for those of you that are not pet owners, and especially, although there can be extraordinary bills with cats, most of this is, and most volume at a veterinarian is for dogs. The procedures being done now and the costs that you can bear are unreal. Even if you have some kind of pet insurance policy, pet insurance policies are not generally comprehensive, and they have a lot of restrictions based on breed and age and all the rest. So you're really going to be paying significant money. And this is an area that has also been invaded by private equity. And private equity owners buy in particularly into urgent care or pet hospital kind of places that are night, weekend kind of things. And the employees there their whole job that they're pressured to do is to run up a bill on you. So it's not at all unusual now when you go to a pet hospital on evenings and weekends, if it's not a locally owned practice operated by or owned by the veterinarians themselves, and it's owned by a big conglomerate, private equity, what's going to happen is they're going to try to squeeze at least a 4-figure bill out of you, maybe a 5-figure bill. And they have trained their workers how to run those bills up. And you're there desperate because you love your pet so much. And you're like, oh, yes, 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 yes. And you sign and you give them the credit card number. And it's like an unlimited bill that you have just created. And so this is hard. In a survey that was reported in USA Today, over 90% of pet owners say they've experienced some degree of financial stress in the last year because of the cost of their pet. 2/3 of people say they've had to cut back on other personal spending because of the cost of pet care. And 2/3 have had to go borrow money from family or friends for the pet. And this is crazy. 1/3 have had to go take a second job to be able to pay for the care for their pet. So am I trying to tell you that you don't have a pet? Am I telling you you're not supposed to have that companionship in your life? That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it's not a decision to take lightly, to make lightly, that you're going to bring a pet into the household. Because the story I told once I got some pushback on, but I'm going to tell it again about our fish tank. Years ago, my wife loves fish. And so for her birthday, I saw a sale online for a fish tank with the filter and all that stuff. So I buy this fish tank for her and give it to her for her birthday. Well, I had no idea because I've never had fish. I never even had, like a lot of kids, come home with the goldfish in the plastic bag. Never even had that. Oh, man, I was clueless how much it cost having fish. And we had this wonderful fish tank, and just the coolest fish in it and all that. But the upkeep, the taking care of the fish, all that, and then the fish getting into fights and eating each other or whatever, you paid for that fish. Oh, wow. But anyway, what I learned was an important lifelong lesson. We had that fish tank until we moved, and then we moved to a place where it wasn't appropriate to have a fish tank, to a high-rise. But the point is that with a pet, you really need to think about, is it something you're going to be able to afford in your life? And the reason I say this is you talk to the people at pet rescues, they're all overwhelmed right now. So many people who were lonely or psychologically disrupted during COVID got pets who had not been prior pet owners, and then life resumed more normally, and people found they couldn't keep the pet in their lives, and it's caused this enormous problem with rescues and the pound and all that. And so it is a decision I want you to make, because that is a living being you're bringing into your house. And really think about, can you afford it? When you have one, though, please do not forget what I've said about knowing who the owner is of a place you're taking your pet off hours. Because there are places that are run by veterinarians that are in the business because they actually care about animals. And then there's the private equity owners and the Wall Street crowd that own these practices just to squeeze money out of people. It's an entirely different thing.
And someone who works with us, her daughter just brought her dog in with pneumonia to one of these emergency vets, and the bill was $10,000.
It did hit the 5 figures.
Can you believe that? But I would say this too, I mean, this isn't in case of emergency, but if you're anywhere near a veterinary hospital and you have a pet, a veterinary school, that's a place where you can get great care at a discount. I know a lot of people who take their pets for, especially if they have big things they need done, but even exams and stuff, annual exams. It's, you have supervising veterinarians with the students, and that's a great way to save money.
You just brought up something that came up a different way recently about the dental, and talking about dental tourism. And what I didn't mention then is just what you said, is that dental schools, the students have to learn on someone, and they're supervised by professors. Having dental care that you can't afford otherwise done at one of the dental schools is a great idea. Thanks for the suggestion about the pets, too.
Sure. Okay, Michael in California wrote in. He says, I've been in the market for a new credit card. What are your thoughts on the Fidelity Rewards credit card? I like that it's a 2% cash back card with no annual fee and no foreign transaction fee, something I am looking for in a card. And I don't mind opening an account with them.
So normally, Fidelity uses the card as a way to build a tighter connection with people who have accounts with Fidelity Investments, and also exactly what you said, Michael. It's a way of attracting new customers. It's a fantastic card. In fact, it's been on our best credit card list on Clark.com ever since we started that list forever ago. This is a great card product. The 2% goes into either an investment account, a retirement account. They can go in the Fidelity 529 account. That the 2%, no games, no gimmicks. It goes into your account, and it is a superior card. And there's a big market share fight going on right now with 2% cashback cards. and there are more and more of them. And so it's a great idea, especially so many people carry these airline cards that unless you fly that airline a lot, I like it to be twice a month, and that you charge high volume on it, you're much better off not paying any annual fees on a card and just get a simple cashback card.
Clint in Texas says, I'm looking to possibly buy some real estate in the near future. I know the area well and know the exact type of property I'm looking for. I've bought houses in the past and feel comfortable doing my own negotiation, research, and contracts. With the new realtor laws, can I be my own buyer's agent and use any incentives the seller is offering to a buyer's agent to reduce my purchase price? If so, how would this work? Would I just call the listing agent and request a showing? Would the listing agent be required to disclose if the seller is offering any incentives to the buyer? I really don't see the value in having a buyer's agent in my situation and would rather have a discount in price if the seller is offering the commission.
Okay, we are in the earliest of innings with the new rules having and new contracts having gone into effect. If you're not familiar with this at all, what happened in the past was that someone putting a property for sale would agree up front in the contract they would sign with what's known as the listing agent, the person who was the one putting the home in MLS, taking the pictures, marketing it for sale, what would be paid to the buyer's agent. And so often in the country of late, it's been something like a 3 and 3. So the listing agent would get 3%, the buyer's agent would get 3%, and all that was paid by the seller. Under the new rules, what's going to happen is it is happening with an uncoupling. So you as a buyer will, and the industry hates this, you as a buyer will decide, are you going to hire a buyer's agent? And if you do, what you're going to pay that person. At first, what will happen is the commission will stay pretty much as it's been, and then only gradually over time will the pricing model change, because there's so much history in how the pricing has worked in terms of commissions. So it will actually be different than you think when you go out to buy, and that is you will be able to represent yourself, and there will not be a 3% buyer's agent commission. The seller will just pay 3%. The net benefit of that should not be based on what incentives they have for a buyer's agent. What it will be is the price will effectively be 3% lower because the seller is no longer paying that buyer's agent commission. People will find that unless you are very experienced like you yourself say you are, you will benefit from having a buyer's agent. But you will also decide what that's worth to you. And is it going to be a flat rate in dollars? Is it going to be a percent of the purchase? And this will happen haphazardly, and it will vary regionally around the United States how things settle down over time.
And this is from Sue in Wisconsin. Hi, Clark. I took your advice many years ago and opened a 2025 Target Retirement Roth IRA. I'm very glad I did, thank you, but now that 2025 is just around the corner, I'm not sure what happens to the fund. I don't need it immediately. Do I just leave it, move it, change the asset mix? I'm thankful for all your great advice over the years.
Well, thank you very much. And what's so wonderful, Sue, is that you've been saving this money and investing in your future in the Target Retirement Fund. So what happens in the target year is that when we hit next year, it doesn't suddenly all go into a bunker mode, bunker mentality. There will continue to be a need in that fund for years to come to have a meaningful exposure to the stock market. What happens is it goes into a retiree mode in 2025, where prior to that, it's more built towards a growing mode. And in a retiree mode, the thinking is the portfolio has to be more defensive so that in down years for the market, you go down a lot less than the market goes down. And in up years, you'll go up less to make the portfolio a less risky portfolio, since you're having, in theory, starting next year, you're having to withdraw money in it to live. Now, if you end up, let's say you end up working for years past your intended 2025, you could move the portfolio to, depending on if the investment house you have has a 2030 fund or 2035, you base it on the year that you intend not to work anymore, and then you don't have the income coming in currently that covers short term when the market might have a decline. But when you're at the point that you're ready to start withdrawing money from it, that's when it's really important to be in retirement fund mode, which would be if you're retiring in 2025 and you're in a 2025 fund, you're exactly where you should be. Again, though, still with exposure to stocks, depending on the financial house, maybe 30 to 40% of the money in there is still exposed to the stock market. And I want to tell you about something people do so much in the years approaching retirement. They look a whole lot at moving to Arizona, moving to Florida, whatever, moving to North Carolina. There's a special thing you've got to understand about what's going on in the Florida market that affects decisions to move there, to retire there, to own real estate there. And I'm going to fill you in straight ahead. A lot of times, something that I talk about on the podcast is based on realizing from a question someone asked me, I really need to address something. And so there's something that is a pivot in the real estate market, specifically in the state of Florida, that I got to make sure you're aware of. If you're thinking, hey, I want to buy a vacation place, or I'm intending in 10 years to retire to the state of Florida, and I want to go ahead and buy a place, or you are retiring and you want to buy a place. The Florida market, particularly in the coastal counties, very heavily tilted towards condos because of so often the part-time nature of people living in them. And the condo market is starting to have the shoes drop hard from two factors. One that I addressed, I think, 2 years ago, that it was coming, has now, like, the reality has like hit people square between the eyes. And that is because of the tragic collapse of an older condominium in South Florida that had tragic loss of lives. The Florida State Legislature passed new laws that enforce strict standards on condos that were built in 1994 or prior, which is a huge percent of the condominium inventory in the state of Florida. I mean, we think 30 years ago is forever ago. It's not. Maybe if you look at a picture of yourself from 30 years prior, it feels like it was forever ago, but not really in the scheme of life. So we have a problem going on right now that will normalize over time, but is an emphatic problem right now. So the legislature passes this thing that requires Florida condominiums that are 30 years old or older to actually have meaningful reserves, to have a plan of regularly scheduled maintenance and repair and replacement as a building ages and the components of it tire out. And the real danger of potential injury or death is obviously the closer you get to the ocean, the more dangerous it is because of the extreme effect of the elements from the sea air, the salt water, all the rest on the buildings. So all at once, buildings are having to come up with Soviet-style 5-year plans and they're having to do meaningful repairs that have been what they call deferred maintenance year after year after year. So you got a lot of people in these buildings who maybe are retired, maybe it was a part-time place, and they didn't sign up for having a special assessment that could be more than what they had originally paid for their unit. So the inventory of units for sale has gone through the roof in Florida, and it is different than the single-family housing market because this is something that the buildings are compelled to do. So people are bailing. And a lot of out-of-state buyers don't even know about this. And they come in there like, wow, this condo is so much cheaper than I thought it would be. Not realizing that the purchase price is not the only price you're going to pay. And you may have to pay a very large fee. Now, we live part-time in the state of Florida, and there's a building near us that is a mid-sized building, not a huge building, that the unit owners collectively are facing a $14 million special assessment. Seriously. And you better believe a lot of those units are for sale right now. A buyer not doing good due diligence or not having an agent who is really knowledgeable about what's going on with the underlying issues involving condos, man. So this is, why did I call this a transitional problem or whatever term I used? Because this is happening like all at once to all buildings older than 30. Moving forward, buildings younger than 30 will prepare, they'll plan, they'll collect in their regular monthly dues, they'll build up meaningful reserves. So this is a one-time impact from this law going into effect. And so buying a condo in 24, 25, maybe the first half of 26, has real hazard with the unknowns of the additional costs you'll face buying them. So if you see something, you're like, wow, that price is right. Is it really right because of those additional costs? The second factor in Florida affecting both condos and homes is one that has come up in questions again and again on our podcast, and that's the increase in homeowners insurance. And it is not affecting condos with the same impact as it affects single-family homes, but it is a meaningful factor and is a significant increase, just not with the full impact that owners of individual homes in Florida are facing. But you just got to know the deal is not necessarily what it appears to the naked eye. Christa?
Naked.
Did I say it wrong again?
No, you said it your way. That's not necessarily wrong.
What's the right way to say it?
Naked.
Naked?
So if you go to buy, like, you don't want to buy a condo that's 26 years old or 27 because the special assessment may not have happened yet.
It's not going to, but I'm hoping that condos that are in their 20s, that the boards will be forward thinking. And that's why I see this as a problem just for the next couple of years.
Right, but even then, you're still going to have a huge, you have to think those condo fees are going to go way up over the next several years. Like,
not if the board starts now raising fees more moderately. It's like any problem you have. Like I talked about with Social Security, the sooner that Congress addresses the funding gap with Social Security, the less disruption, the less impact there is to taxpayers' wallets. The longer you delay fixing a problem, the harder the impact is on people. The disruptions are so much greater. This is that same kind of thing. So the older condos were like, hey, looking the other way, mañana, there's some other board's problem. And now everybody's aware who's on a condo board because they live there.
right.
And they have to comply with this law. Before they could just say, look the other way. Now they can't. And that's why I'm not as worried about a 25-year-old condo as I am one that's 28, 29, 30 or over. And that's why I say there's the next couple of years.
Yeah. And I'm just also wondering, like, I mean, I know we need to get to questions, but around the country and other places where there have been a lot of fires or other things, like this stuff probably, like, you know, there may be new regulations, new codes and standards for places because we're seeing so much of that this
Yeah,
could
I mean,
affect more people than
we
Florida.
definitely, there are so many things, costs you have with mitigation. That's something I'm going to talk about from time to time is societies adjust to change. Sometimes the change feels like, or the problem seems insurmountable. No, we as humans are adaptable.
Okay, so a few questions here about paying for things. This one's from Jim in Indiana. Costco is requiring new members to put a credit or debit card on file, even if you're paying cash for a membership. They're refusing to sign you up without this. Some people don't have a Visa card or debit card, and this policy makes no sense. And then I have another one about Costco from Darlene in Illinois. She says, I'm a Costco shopper, but do not have their Visa card. I have MasterCard, American Express, and Discover, but not Visa, and do not wish to get a Costco Visa. I also do not use a debit card. Clark says not to use a personal check, so how do I pay at Costco without using cash?
You don't. I mean, you gotta pay cash it's have a Visa card or have cash. Let me explain what the warehouse clubs generally decided. And Sam's has gone a different path on this, by the way. But in the warehouse club business, the whole idea is to hold markups down as much as possible. And, there's this problem where we have this Visa MasterCard cartel in the United States, and they charge these ginormous fees for merchants. And it's become one of merchants' biggest expenses. Well, for warehouse clubs to be able to hold down that markup at Costco, 14% on merchandise, 15% on the Kirkland Signature private label goods, they've got to make sure that they're not paying large fees. So what they do, Costco has, 60 million members in the United States, some number like that. So they were able to go to the big money center banks and put their business out for bid. You may remember they used to be with American Express. American Express had a huge drop in profits and volume initially when they lost the Costco business. Citibank decided, hey, this is worth it to us, and Citibank offered them a sweetheart deal on merchant clearing rates. And part of the deal, Visa was a partner in it with Citi, and so the agreement they reached was only Visa could ever be taken in a Costco, period. There's not really a problem having the Costco Visa because you get 2% cash back on everything you buy there and there's no annual fee. But I understand if you don't want to carry one, you don't want to use what I call a piece of trash fake Visa or fake MasterCard, a debit card, then what you're left with is truly paying with cash. Can I go back to the first thing, though? Mm-hmm. Somebody else asked me about this. I can't find anything on Costco's site saying that you can't have an account if you don't put on file with them a credit card or debit card. And next time I'm in, I'm going to ask at the membership desk, is this really true? And what is the reason for it? Costco has a new CEO, a new CFO, and I feel like they are violating the key rule, which is do no harm. I think they're implementing too many changes right now that are alienating members. And my advice, slow it down.
All right, and VW in Virginia says, I know from you that I should never, never write a check to pay for anything.
Wait, let's try this again. Never, never, not ever.
Especially through the mail, and I prefer not to give out my credit card number in case they keep charging my accounts. It's a headache to get these removed. So what can I do to pay for magazine subscriptions or donations that I get in the mail?
Okay. So great question, VW, and the wonderful tool available from, I wouldn't say all issuers, but most issuers now, is where you can get, for something you're buying online, you can get a one-time use number from your issuer, what they call a virtual number. And these numbers are of no use to a hacker who intercepts, and they're of no use to that business trying to run through additional charges that you haven't authorized. So with your card issuer, I don't know how many cards you carry, you can go on their app or you can sign in the website and you'll see whether or not they offer one-time use cards or virtual card numbers. They're not doing it as a service to you. They're doing it as a service to them at the credit card companies because they're trying to cut down on the amount of unauthorized charges and fraudulent charges, and the virtual card numbers have had a big impact on that. So I would say that is the best way, is to use the virtual numbers, and then you can rest easy. The good news, if you do have a credit card number that's stolen from you, as long as you're paying attention to your bills, it's hassle only. You know, you got a new card, you might have to update with anybody you have automatic payments with, whatever. That is much less hassle than somebody who intercepts your check that has so many bad parts to it. I can't even tell you all of them all at once.
Well, you did talk about it the other day too.
I mean, it drives me crazy that we have this analog thing, a check, that at the time they became popularized, it was a great thing. It was a new way to more efficiently move money, to handle paying for things. And now the world has moved on. We didn't even use the word technology when checks existed in a big way. And now they are a real problem because so many ways that checking account can hurt you. And that's why not writing checks is a really good idea. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll come back and visit with us tomorrow. Know what we're all about is you learning ways to save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off.